Whispers in the Dark. Tony and Ziva's Silent Vow in NCIS Season 24. The rain arrived without warning, drumming against the windows of NCIS headquarters as Washington, D.C. disappeared beneath a veil of gray. Inside, the bullpen buzzed with controlled chaos, but Tony DiNozzo barely noticed. His attention was fixed on the encrypted message glowing on McGee's monitor. It contained only 6 words. "She knows. They're coming tonight. Hurry." No signature, no location, just enough to send a chill through the room. Tony didn't need an explanation. "Ziva," he whispered. Before anyone could stop him, he was already heading toward the elevator. An hour later, Tony stood alone inside an abandoned church hidden on the outskirts of the city. Dust floated through the dim light filtering from broken stained glass windows. Silence filled every corner. Then he heard footsteps. Out of the shadows emerged Ziva David. She looked different, not weaker, but wearier. The years had added invisible scars, yet her eyes remained as sharp as ever. "You came," she said softly. "You sent the message. I hoped you would understand." Tony smiled faintly. "I always do." For a brief moment, the world outside no longer existed. No missions, no danger, no secrets, just Tony and Ziva. But peace never lasted long. Ziva unfolded a small map across an old wooden table. "A covert organization has rebuilt itself," she explained. "Not the same enemy we faced before. Worse. They have people everywhere." Tony studied the markings. "They're hunting you." "No." She met his gaze. "They're hunting us." The realization settled heavily between them. Years ago, they had survived impossible odds by trusting each other. Now, history threatened to repeat itself. Only this time, failure wasn't an option. Back at NCIS, Director Vance authorized an unofficial operation. "We're off the books," he warned. McGee adjusted his glasses. "So? Another normal day?" Even Torres couldn't hide a grin. Despite the tension, the familiar humor reminded everyone why this team always found a way forward. Casey raced through digital evidence while Parker coordinated surveillance teams across the city. Every clue pointed toward one location, an underground intelligence exchange scheduled for midnight. If Tony and Ziva were right, every major player would be there. Night fell like a curtain. The abandoned subway station echoed with distant trains as masked figures exchanged encrypted drives beneath flickering lights. Tony adjusted his earpiece. "Everyone in position?" McGee answered first. "Ready?" Torres followed. "Locked and loaded." Parker's voice remained calm. "Wait for my signal." Beside Tony, Ziva checked her weapon before quietly placing it back into its holster. "We avoid violence unless necessary." Tony looked surprised. "Since when did you become the cautious one? I had a good teacher." He laughed softly. "I don't remember teaching that. You taught me something better." "And what's that?" She paused. "That surviving means more than winning." The operation unfolded with perfect precision until the lights suddenly died. Darkness swallowed the station. Gunfire erupted. Voices echoed through the tunnels. Chaos replaced strategy. Tony grabbed Ziva's hand without thinking. "Stay with me." "I'm not leaving." Flashlights cut through the darkness like swords. Enemy operatives appeared from every direction. One after another, they closed in. Tony pushed Ziva behind a concrete pillar just as bullets shattered the wall beside them. "You okay?" She nodded. "And you?" "I've had worse dates." Even now, she couldn't suppress a smile. McGee finally restored emergency power. Red warning lights flooded the tunnels. The attackers scattered. Parker's team moved in with flawless coordination. Within minutes, the operation was over. Most of the suspects were in custody. Others disappeared into the maze beneath the city. The mission was technically a success, yet something felt unfinished, because the organization's leader had escaped. Again. Hours later, sunrise painted the Potomac River gold. Tony and Ziva stood alone, overlooking the quiet water. Neither spoke. Some silences carried more meaning than words ever could. Tony finally broke it. Do you ever wonder if this life will stop chasing us? Ziva watched the sunrise. No. You sound certain. I am, he sighed. So this never ends? It ends when we decide what matters more. Tony turned toward her. And what matters? She reached into her jacket and removed a small silver pendant. It was scratched from years of wear. I carried this through every mission. Tony recognized it instantly. You still have it? I never stopped. His voice grew quieter. I thought you lost it. I almost did. She stepped closer. But some promises are stronger than distance. Tony looked at the necklace before gently closing her hand around it. I don't need proof anymore. You don't? He shook his head. I already know. For years, their relationship had been built on unfinished conversations, impossible choices, and sacrifices no one else could understand. Love had never needed dramatic speeches. It lived in every rescue, every glance across a crowded room, every decision to return when walking away would have been easier. Without another word, Tony extended his hand, not as an agent, not as a former partner, simply as the man who had crossed continents searching for her more than once. Ziva accepted. No audience watched. No ceremony marked the moment. No vows were spoken aloud. Yet both understood exactly what had happened. It was a promise, not of safety, not of easy days ahead, but of standing together, whatever darkness waited beyond the next mission. Their silent vow echoed louder than any declaration ever could. As they walked away, Parker's call came through Tony's phone. We've got another lead. Tony exchanged one last look with Ziva. She smiled. Back to work? He nodded. Together. They disappeared into the morning light, ready to face another chapter of danger, mystery, and sacrifice. Behind them, the river continued flowing, carrying away the night's secrets, while guarding one that belonged only to them. Some stories are remembered because of the battles won. Others endure because of the promises that never needed to be spoken. For Tony and Ziva, their greatest commitment was never written in reports or recorded in mission logs. It lived quietly between every heartbeat, every shared glance, and every impossible choice they made for each other. And somewhere, hidden beneath the whispers of the dark, their story was only just beginning. Whispers in the Dark, Tony and Ziva's Silent Vow in NCIS Season 24, Part 2. The first rays of sunlight barely touched the streets of Washington before the silence was broken. Tony's phone vibrated. One message. Package compromised. They know about Tali. His expression changed instantly. Ziva saw it before he spoke. What happened? Tony handed her the phone. She read the message only once. For the first time since returning to Washington, genuine fear crossed her face. They found her. Tony immediately shook his head. No, it says they know about her. That's different. But not by much. Neither of them wanted to imagine the consequences. For years, they had sacrificed everything to give Tali a normal life, far away from espionage, assassins, and international conspiracies. Now someone had opened a door that should have remained sealed forever. Inside NCIS headquarters, Parker gathered everyone in the conference room. A digital map stretched across the main screen, covered with red markers connected by encrypted communication routes. Casey pointed to a blinking signal. I decrypted fragments from one of the drives we recovered. What did you find? McGee asked. It wasn't a weapons deal. The room became quiet. It was an auction. Tony frowned. An auction for what? Casey hesitated. Intelligence assets. She zoomed in on another encrypted file. They're selling identities, safe houses, undercover agents. Torres leaned forward. And, Casey took a slow breath, they also have information on former Mossad operatives. Everyone looked toward Ziva. Her name wasn't spoken. It didn't need to be. Director Vance entered carrying an old classified folder. I hoped I'd never have to open this again. He placed it carefully on the table. Across the front were stamped 3 words: Project Eclipse. Tony had never heard the name. McGee hadn't either. Even Parker looked puzzled. Only Ziva remained perfectly still. I remember Eclipse. Everyone turned toward her. It was never supposed to exist. Years earlier, before Ziva joined NCIS permanently, several intelligence agencies secretly cooperated on an unofficial contingency program. Its purpose was simple. If high-value operatives disappeared, Eclipse would locate them or eliminate them. No government admitted the program existed. No records survived. At least that was the official story. It wasn't shut down, Ziva said quietly. It evolved. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, inside an abandoned military bunker, a man watched surveillance footage. Tony, Ziva, Parker, McGee. Every frame had been recorded within the last 24 hours. A woman stepped beside him. Our teams failed in the subway. They were expected to. You wanted them to lose? He smiled. No. He paused the footage as Tony helped Ziva stand after the firefight. I wanted confirmation. Confirmation of what? The man leaned closer to the screen. They're still protecting each other. He slowly closed the laptop, which means we've already won. Back at NCIS, McGee uncovered something alarming. Every encrypted server linked to Project Eclipse had suddenly come back online. Not one, not two. All of them. That's impossible. Casey checked independently. My system shows the same thing. Parker folded his arms. Can someone explain why a dead intelligence program just woke up? Tony answered before anyone else could. Because someone finally has the master key. Hours later, the team arrived at an abandoned government archive scheduled for demolition. According to old records, Eclipse had stored backup intelligence there decades earlier. Dust covered everything. Metal shelves stretched endlessly through underground vaults. Torres switched on his flashlight. This place gives me horror movie vibes. Tony smirked. Then don't split up. That's exactly what people say before someone disappears. Almost on cue, a loud metallic crash echoed through the darkness. Everyone froze. Parker signaled silently. Weapons raised, they advanced carefully. Nothing. Only fallen shelves. Until Ziva noticed something strange. The dust. Tony looked confused. What about it? There are footprints. Fresh ones. Someone had entered only minutes earlier. The team followed the trail deep beneath the archive. Eventually, they reached a massive steel door left partially open. Inside stood dozens of old servers. Most had long since failed. One remained active. Its green indicator blinked steadily. McGee connected his tablet. I'm in. Lines of encrypted code flooded the screen. Casey watched remotely from headquarters. I've never seen encryption like this. McGee's expression hardened. This isn't encryption. What is it? It's bait. Before anyone could react, every monitor in the room suddenly switched on. One face appeared across every screen simultaneously. A man wearing no mask, no disguise, just a calm smile. Hello, Anthony. Tony stepped closer. Do I know you? You should. The stranger turned toward another camera. And hello, Officer David. Ziva's breathing slowed. Recognition. She knew him. Tony noticed immediately. You've seen him before? She nodded. Long ago. Who is he? Her answer barely rose above a whisper. His name is Elias Varga. Silence filled the room. McGee searched rapidly. I can't find any record. You won't. Ziva never looked away from the screens. Because officially, he died 12 years ago. Elias smiled. I always admired your memory. Tony tightened his grip on his weapon. What do you want? I don't want anything. He paused. I simply wish to finish what was interrupted. And what's that? Elias looked directly into the camera. The last mission you and Ziva never completed. A countdown suddenly appeared on every monitor. 5 o'clock, McGee's eyes widened. Tony. What? This server isn't storing files. What is it? McGee swallowed. It's transmitting every classified identity Eclipse ever collected. Across the globe, in real time, 5 minutes until every undercover operative would be exposed. Tony looked at Parker. Parker looked at Ziva. Nobody needed orders. There was only one choice. Stop the transmission. Before the countdown reached 0. Whispers in the dark. Tony and Ziva's silent vow in NCIS, Season 24, Part 3, Final. The countdown glowed across every monitor. 4:59, 4:58, 4:57. The underground archive felt smaller with every passing second. McGee's fingers flew across the keyboard. I'm locked out! Casey's voice crackled through the comms from NCIS headquarters. Elias built a quantum encryption loop. Every time I break one firewall, 3 more appear. Parker scanned the room. There has to be a manual override. There is, Ziva said quietly. Everyone turned toward her. But it was designed so only 2 people could activate it. Tony frowned. Who? The person inside the server room. And someone standing in the control chamber. McGee's eyes widened as he pulled up the old blueprints. She's right. He highlighted 2 rooms on the map. They're nearly half a mile apart. And the doors lock permanently once the shutdown begins, Parker added after reading the specifications. Tony immediately understood the problem. If one person starts the sequence, the other person can't come back. Silence settled over the team. I'll do it. The words came from Ziva without hesitation. Tony looked at her. No. You know I'm the only one who remembers the protocol. I said no. Parker stepped closer. We don't have time. Tony ignored him. There has to be another way. There isn't. Ziva's voice remained calm. If the transmission finishes, hundreds of undercover agents around the world die. Tony stared at the countdown. 3:41. Every second felt heavier than the last. Far above the archive, inside a nearby rooftop observation post, Elias Varga watched everything unfold through hidden cameras. His assistant smiled. They're dividing. Exactly as expected. But if they stop the upload, Elias calmly poured himself a cup of coffee. They won't. You sound confident. I designed Eclipse. He smiled faintly. I know every choice they'll make before they make it. Back underground, Tony suddenly grabbed Ziva's hand. No more sacrifices. She looked at him. Tony, for years we've kept saying goodbye. This isn't goodbye. It feels like one. She stepped closer until only inches separated them. When I disappeared years ago, I thought I'd lost you forever. When we found each other again, I promised myself I'd never waste another moment. Tony lowered his head. I can't watch you disappear again. A faint smile crossed her face. You won't. Parker interrupted gently. 3 minutes. McGee looked between them. We have to move. Tony closed his eyes for a brief moment. Then he nodded. Fine. Everyone began moving toward their assigned positions. But just before Ziva walked away, Tony reached into his jacket. He removed the small silver pendant she had shown him the previous morning. Without speaking, he fastened it gently around her neck. She touched it carefully. Our silent vow, she whispered. Tony smiled. No matter what happens, we finish this together. The countdown reached 02:15. Tony sprinted through the eastern tunnel toward the control chamber. Behind him, Parker and Torres held off armed operatives who suddenly poured into the archive. Gunfire echoed through the underground halls. Concrete shattered. Sparks rained from broken electrical panels. Torres ducked behind a pillar. I was hoping for a quiet Thursday. Parker fired 2 precise shots. You picked the wrong career. Meanwhile, Ziva entered the server room. The massive steel door closed behind her with a deafening boom. Heavy locking bolts engaged automatically. She was sealed inside. Rows of glowing processors surrounded her like walls of blue light. A single control terminal waited in the center. Across its screen flashed one message: authorized personnel only. She placed her hand on the biometric scanner. The machine responded instantly. "Welcome, Officer David." Her expression hardened. "So, you really never deleted me." Tony finally burst into the control chamber. McGee guided him through the earpiece. "Panel on your left. I see it. Remove the safety cover." Tony ripped away the metal plate. Inside waited a single ignition key. "What now?" Casey answered. "When Ziva starts the shutdown, turn the key exactly 3 seconds later. No sooner. No later." The countdown continued. 00:59. Elias leaned forward in his chair, smiling. This is where heroes fail. Inside the server room, Ziva entered the final command. The computer displayed one last warning. "Confirm global purge." She hesitated only a second, then pressed yes. Every alarm in the archive activated simultaneously. Red emergency lights flooded every hallway. McGee shouted through the comm. "Tony, 3 seconds!" Tony counted under his breath. 1, 2. He closed his eyes. 3. The ignition key turned. For one terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, every screen throughout the archive went black. The countdown disappeared. The transmission stopped. Worldwide. At the same instant, explosions erupted through the underground facility as overloaded servers destroyed themselves one after another. Parker yelled, "Everyone out!" Tony immediately ran back toward the server room. Smoke filled every corridor. Concrete collapsed from the ceiling. He reached the steel door. It wouldn't open. "Ziva!" No answer. He slammed against the controls. Again. Nothing. The emergency lock had jammed. From inside, Ziva heard him. She placed one hand gently against the cold steel. "I know you're there," Tony's voice cracked. "I'm getting you out. You already did. No, there has to be another entrance. There isn't." His breathing became frantic. "I'm not leaving. You have to. I won't." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ziva smiled through tears. "You once told me that surviving means more than winning." Tony rested his forehead against the door. "I lied." Suddenly, a powerful blast shook the hallway. The emergency locking system short-circuited. The steel bolts released. The massive door slowly creaked open. Tony didn't wait. He rushed inside. There she was, alive, covered in dust, still wearing the silver pendant. Without saying a single word, he pulled her into the strongest embrace of his life. Neither cared about the collapsing building around them. For one brief moment, the entire world disappeared. Hours later, emergency crews searched the ruins. Project Eclipse had been erased forever. Every classified identity remained protected. Elias Varga had escaped once again, but not before leaving behind one final encrypted message. This was only the beginning. Back at NCIS headquarters, the team gathered in silence. No celebration, no speeches, just quiet relief. Parker looked at Tony and Ziva standing side by side. "I've worked with a lot of partners," he smiled, "but I've never seen trust like yours." Tony glanced at Ziva. "It took us a long time to get here." Ziva intertwined her fingers with his. "And we're not letting go again." Outside, the sun rose over Washington, casting golden light across the city. The danger wasn't over. Another mission was already waiting. Another mystery had begun. But whatever darkness lay ahead, Tony and Ziva would face it the same way they always had, not with promises spoken aloud, but with unwavering loyalty, quiet courage, and a silent vow that no enemy could ever break. Whispers in the Dark, Tony and Ziva's silent vow in NCIS Season 24. Part 4, The Ghost Protocol. 3 days after the destruction of Project Eclipse, the halls of NCIS felt unusually quiet. Too quiet. Tony had learned long ago that silence was often more dangerous than gunfire. The team was still recovering from the mission. McGee spent nearly every waking hour rebuilding secure servers after the global cyber attack. Casey searched through fragments of damaged hard drives recovered from the ruins of the archive. Torres pretended everything was normal, but everyone noticed he checked every doorway before entering a room. Only Parker seemed calm. That changed when Director Vance walked into the briefing room carrying a sealed black case. "I just received this from Interpol," he said. "No return address." He placed the case on the table. Inside was a single encrypted drive and a photograph. Tony picked it up. His smile disappeared. The picture showed him, Ziva, and Tali walking along a quiet beach in Europe nearly 6 months earlier. Someone had been watching them, someone close enough to take the photograph without ever being noticed. Ziva slowly turned the picture over. Written in black ink were 5 chilling words. "Your family is never alone." No one spoke. The threat was no longer directed at agents. It was personal. Casey connected the encrypted drive to an isolated computer. "I've never seen this encryption signature before," she admitted. McGee leaned over her shoulder. "It isn't military. It isn't intelligence either." "So what is it?" Parker asked. Casey frowned. "It's custom built." Seconds later, the screen flickered. Static filled the monitor before an image slowly appeared. Not Elias Varga. Someone else. A woman dressed entirely in black sat in a dark room illuminated by a single desk lamp. Her face remained partially hidden. "Anthony DiNozzo," she said calmly. "Ziva David. If you're watching this, then Eclipse is gone." She almost smiled. "Exactly as planned." Tony looked at Ziva. "She wanted us to destroy it." The woman continued. "You believe Elias Varga created Project Eclipse?" A brief pause. "He didn't." Another pause. "He merely inherited it." Every person in the room stared silently at the screen. "Because Eclipse answered to someone else." The recording ended with a series of coordinates. McGee enlarged the map. "That's impossible." "What?" Parker asked. "The coordinates point to an island." "So?" "There isn't supposed to be an island there." Satellite images showed nothing but open water. Yet decades-old naval charts clearly marked a classified military installation. Tony folded his arms. "A ghost base." Ziva nodded. "I've heard stories. I thought they were myths." Thousands of miles away, hidden beneath towering cliffs in the Mediterranean Sea, Elias Varga stood inside an underground command center. Massive digital screens surrounded him. One operative approached cautiously. "Sir, they destroyed Eclipse." "I know. They recovered the message." "I expected they would." The operative hesitated. "They're heading toward the island." Elias looked out through reinforced glass toward the crashing waves below. "Good. It has been waiting for them." He turned slowly. "Prepare Protocol Black." "What about the prisoner?" A faint smile crossed Elias's face. "Keep him alive. For now." Back in Washington, Tony couldn't shake a strange feeling. The photograph, the island, the mysterious woman, none of it made sense. He stepped outside headquarters to clear his head. As he reached the parking lot, a little girl accidentally bumped into him. "I'm sorry," she whispered before running away. Tony smiled politely. Then he noticed something in his jacket pocket. A folded piece of paper. He unfolded it. Only one sentence was written inside. "Trust no one inside NCIS." His heartbeat quickened. He looked around. The little girl had vanished. There wasn't a single person left in the parking lot. Someone had walked directly into federal headquarters, slipped him a message, and disappeared without leaving a trace. Tony quietly folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. For the first time since returning to NCIS, he wasn't sure who he could trust. And somewhere across the ocean, hidden beneath layers of stone and steel, a prisoner opened his eyes after hearing Tony DiNozzo's name spoken for the first time in years. He smiled weakly. "They're finally coming,"